bump, bump, ba-da-dum, bump, bump. All right, I'm flying solo. It's a solo bendy here on this Tuesday. Welcome to another edition of the Blue Review. I'm Marcus Grant, hanging out with you for the next 25 minutes or so. Talk some Dodger baseball. Obviously, a couple of off days until we get ready for Game 1 of the World Series. For a little bit of housekeeping, corporate Greg Bergman off being corporate somewhere. I'm sure he's got important meetings, things that you have to do when you are the Mao. And Parker Bell is getting ready to get over to Cosm because the Lakers tip off tonight against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And there will be a lot of folks over there at Cosm sort of enjoying the interactive experience of it. Looks really cool at some point. I feel like I need to get over there and check something out. But Parker getting ready for that. So should be a whole lot of fun this evening. Looking forward to the start of another Lakers season, but more importantly, looking forward to Game 1 of the World Series. I mean, that is why we're here on the Blue Review. So we're taking your questions, throw them up there, put them in the chat. We'll get as many of them as we can. In the meantime, you just have to listen to me ramble until we get some good questions here. But before we dive into any of that, should tell you, as always, that the Blue Review is presented by LAX. At Los Angeles International Airport, changes are arriving daily to reduce traffic, save guests time, and transform the travel experience. Info at flylax.com/transforminglax. So, appreciate all you guys in the chat so far. Good to see a whole lot of familiar names and faces, or at least familiar avatars, showing up there in the chat. Yesterday, I had a good chance to talk to Clint Pasillas. We had Greg Bergman here. We sort of recapped what happened in the NLCS. Not so much a preview of the series, a little bit. Clint actually going out and saying Dodgers in 5. Greg and I had Dodgers in 6. So we will kind of get into some of the things that can make that happen later on in the week. But first question from Stoned Steve Mason. Any early word on the status of Freeman, Vesia, and Gratterall? I think for Freeman, it is going to be sort of a day-to-day situation. I mean, the upside to having these few days off and not having to go until Friday is that he does get to rest a little bit. And, I know the last few games have sort of been touch and go with him, just trying to, do whatever treatments he can to get ready to play. And, we saw that he wasn't able to go in Game 6, really hasn't been able to provide much at the plate. You can tell that ankle is hurting him. He's kind of become a slap hitter over the last week or so. So hopefully having a few days off allows him to get some treatment. He can stay off of it as much as possible. No base stealing in the next few days. And hopefully we'll be ready to go for Game 1. Vesia, it sounds like, has a good chance to be ready to go for the World Series. I know that it was basically a disappointment for him, for the team to not have him after that injury that he suffered in the division series. So, it sounds like things are trending in a positive direction. So hopefully he will be available. Going to be really necessary just because you need an extra left-hander in that lineup. Somebody that you feel like can maybe take down Juan Soto in some big situations, because you got to believe at some point over the course of the series, you're going to have some big at-bats with Juan Soto involved, and to have another lefty in there is going to certainly be important. And then as for Gratterall, it does sound like there's some positive news on Brusdar Gratterall. I don't know if there's anything definite just yet, but I think there's a hope, at least, that Gratterall can be back for the World Series. So that would be another big arm you can get out of the bullpen in some key situations. It was really frustrating because he was pitching well right before he got hurt. So to lose him for the playoffs so far has been a little bit of a frustration, but maybe, fingers crossed, he can be back to go. Question from Some Kind of Wonderful. Do you think Shohei pitches an inning or two in the World Series? I'm going to say no. I know that was a conversation at the beginning of the postseason as the Dodgers were trying to figure out their pitching staff, trying to figure out, who's going to be starting, who's going to be in the bullpen. And I think there was a little bit of chatter about whether or not Shohei would pitch. Although I think most of that chatter was sort of from the fan and media perspective of people just trying to figure out something and what would be a fun storyline and just, would they need him in an emergency? Seems like the team put a lid on that conversation pretty quickly, and it hasn't come up again. I mean, with the bullpen doing what it's done for the playoffs so far, I think there's a lot less urgency for something like that. And again, they've just been so careful with him. I think they really want to stick to this plan and have him ready to go and ready to pitch next season. So I would not expect anything there. Question from Jasmeet. Do you think they put Miggy on the roster? Who do you think they take off if they do? I do think we're going to see Miguel Rojas on the roster. I don't know if we see who is the odd man out at that point. It could be that it's Chris Taylor. Although, look, Taylor had a couple of nice at bats in that final game. It most likely, I think, would be Kevin Kiermaier is another guy you can sort of take off the roster at this point. You got some good at bats, some big swings out of Andy Pages. He's obviously not the defensive center fielder that Kiermaier is, but we've seen with Dave Roberts being willing to throw Kike out there in the outfield that you can get some decent defense there. Pages gives you way more at the plate than Kiermaier does. Having Miggy Rowe also means you can put Tommy Edman back out in center field and let him do his thing. So I think right now Kiermaier probably the odd man out. We'll see if he's ready to go. Yeah, as Craig mentions, Rojas not really healthy. I know there's talk that he may have to have some surgery in the offseason, so it may not even be an issue. But, if for whatever reason he's able to go, I think Kiermaier's probably the guy that ends up off the roster in the World Series. Question from Nando. Think there's any chance Gonsolin makes the roster? Could he be effective out of the bullpen? I think the chances are really slim at this point. I think if you are Dave Roberts, I think the idea of Gonsolin might be better than the reality of Gonsolin right now. I don't know that you want his first time back in a year to be in really critical situations in the World Series against a power hitting lineup. Again, that was, I think, one of those conversations that we were having back at the start of the playoffs. We weren't really sure how things were going to go and how the pitching staff was going to stack up. So I think right now with what you've got, Gonsolin, I think is sort of a luxury, and I would be very surprised if we see him at this point. Question from Clumsy Chrissy. Who do you think is going to start the series, Yoshi or Flaherty? That's a good question. I would think it's going to be Yoshi. I would think Yamamoto gets game one of this series, but I will tell you that is strictly a guess. I don't have any concrete anything to suggest one way or another who it's going to be. Yamamoto in game one, he's proven, I think, this year that he's sort of a big game hunter. He's gone out there and given them some really good starts when they needed to. Obviously, he had that huge start against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium earlier this year. So maybe that's what Dave is thinking, to kind of see if he can get the Yankees off balance and get game one. But look, Flaherty was good early in the NLCS. Obviously, that second start he had in game 5 was one that we'd all like to forget. So, I think it could really, really go either way. I'm going to guess Yamamoto, but I will tell you that is strictly a guess at this point. Question from Ruben Flores wanting to know what is up with Gavin Lux. Is dealing with a hip injury. And I think for game 6, we didn't see him in part because of the hip injury, in part because the Mets started Sean Manaea, and we know that Lux doesn't really play against left-handed starters. So that probably had something to do with it. But I think the hip injury also had just as much to do with not seeing Lux in that series finale than anything else. I would think we will see him in game 1 just because, again, sort of like with Freeman, he's had a few days to sort of rest it, get it ready, get healthy to go. And it's going to be Garrett Cole. It's going to be a right-hander to start this series for the Yankees. So I think that means more opportunity for Gavin Lux. So I have a feeling we will see him. My guess, and this is assuming Miguel Rojas is not healthy and ready to go, is that we will see, Lux at second base, probably Edman at short, likely Pages in center field. I mean, we know who's in right. We know Mookie's in right. We know Teoscar is going to be in left. And then the question becomes, is Freddie healthy to go because he plays first base? And then that puts Muncy over at third, and Will Smith behind the plate at this point. Um, Dalfool, I'm guessing that's what it is. Dalfool, what is the biggest challenge the Yankees pose? For me, it's two things. One, I think the Yankees have an advantage in starting pitching. They've got four guys that they can go to, right? With between Cole, Heel, Rodon, and then there's some talk that Nestor Cortez could be back and could start for the Yankees if they need to. So that gives them four quality starters that can give them some length. So that is potentially an issue for the Dodgers because the Yankee bullpen is very shaky. Clay Holmes has kind of been shaky all year. Luke Weaver has had some rocky moments this season. So I think if the Dodgers can get through the starting pitching, I think they've got a really good shot to score some runs off the bullpen. But, Cole is going to come out and he's going to be dealing. All these guys have thrown really well in starters roles. So I say that's one challenge. The other part is obviously the sock in the middle of the lineup when you're talking about Soto and obviously Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, who hit some big home runs in the postseason. Trying to keep the ball in the ballpark with those three guys is going to be really, really important. I think the Dodgers have a stronger, deeper lineup from top to bottom, but all it takes is a couple of guys getting on ahead of Judge, and he puts one in the seats, and suddenly it's a big game. So a different game. So I think those are the two biggest things that the Yankees really, really offer that could be a problem for the Dodgers. Let's see. I did see some chatter about Buehler starting game one. Maybe. I don't know that. I don't know if Dave goes to Buehler in game one. Again, all of this is pretty much a guess because I feel like the Dodgers so far have been very quiet on what their pitching plans are for the series. Again, having all this time off means that everybody can sort of get lined up and you can sort of order this how you really want. I don't know if they give the ball to Buehler in game one. I really think it's probably more of a conversation of Yamamoto or Flaherty getting that one. Yeah, BC makes the point. Yamamoto needs more rest. That both he and Flaherty are likely to pitch twice if it goes 7 games. Now, in my mind, in my heart, it goes 6. So hopefully that's not going to be an issue, but certainly 7 is very much a possibility with these two teams. I think the challenge has been, and Dave Roberts has been really good about this, is keeping Yamamoto on that 6-day schedule because I wasn't sure how or if they'd be able to do it when the playoffs started. It just seemed like a real impossibility, but they've been able to keep that thing going, kind of working around the off days, having the bullpen games in there and keeping him closer to that 6-day schedule that he was on all the time in Japan. So at this point, my mantra since midway through the NLDS has been trust Dave. So I'm going to continue to trust Dave because, he has made all the right moves to get them to this point. At this point, I'm just not going to even bother to really, complain about it at this point. BC asking, how long ago did he sprain his ankle? I'm sure referring to Freddie Freeman, should be better. BC, the reports were that if this were the regular season, the severity of the sprain is that he would have been out for maybe 4 to 6 weeks. The fact that he sprained that ankle and within a few days was out there playing, and don't forget, he stole a base in game 1 of the series against the Padres, which had everybody just floored. This was supposed to be a long-term injury. If it weren't the playoffs, I think we would have seen Freeman go on the injured list at some point and just try to rest this thing. But because it's the playoffs, we've seen him out there trying to gut it out, and playing on it is not going to make it better. At this point, it's not going to be fully healthy until next season when he has a chance to just sit down and just sort of rest a little bit for sure. Let's see, any other questions here? I know Craig Osterberg mentioned you can't have 2 injured players in the infield. Yeah, so I think that sort of works against Miggy Rowe coming back, which it's disappointing, right? It's sad because he was playing so well for them this year. Obviously, you knew what he was going to give you defensively, but the fact that he was putting up one of the best offensive seasons of his career, it definitely sucks to lose him at this point of the season, when he could give you so much, especially in the middle of that infield for sure. BC making the point that Dave trusted Yamamoto when the rest of us did. Here's the thing. I I don't know. Maybe I'm weird. Maybe this is me sort of being a little bit I guess, a blue-eyed optimist here. I sort of had faith in Yamamoto. I mean, I don't know. I felt like the starts that he gave them after he came back from the injured list were, they weren't bad starts. It was him sort of working himself back into shape, into form a little bit. But I had faith that he was going to come out and pitch well. In fact, I mean, I can say this now. I don't have the receipts in front of me to show you, but I texted Bergman and Jeff Spiegel, who pops on here, pretty regularly, that I felt like I said, I think first inning of that game, I said, I'm calling it now. I think Yamamoto's going to shove against the Padres, and he went out and was absolutely lights out. So, I at this point, I trust Yamamoto. I trust this pitching staff. They have gotten it done to this point. So we'll see how much they got left. If they have enough for 4 more wins, because that's really all they need. Craig asking, who is a difference maker for the Dodgers? I think it goes back to the guys at the bottom part of the lineup again. They have been so key because, look, everybody expects that Shohei is going to hit. Mookie has obviously figured out whatever was bothering him in previous postseasons. He has seemed to work through that. I know Teoscar had a generally miserable NLCS, although he got hot in that last game or so, but I don't really worry about Teo. But I think it's the bottom of the lineup, right? Can Kike continue to hit in the postseason? Can Will Smith get something going? I mean, it was nice to see the home run from him in Game 6, but until then, he really had been driving the struggle bus. So hopefully that's something to get him going, because Will Smith for much of the season had kind of been a pivot point for me in the lineup, right? You had the guys at the top of the order, with Shohei, Mookie, Freddie, Teo, even Max Muncy, once he came back later in the season, was healthy again. It was Will Smith where, if he hits, then suddenly you're talking about, 6 guys at the top of the lineup that are just really tough outs. And then that makes things better for the guys at the bottom, whether it was Kike, Edman, Chris Taylor, Miggy Rowe when he was healthy, whoever it was. If you had those 6 guys really hitting, then suddenly, they were on base with the guys at the bottom of the lineup and they were getting better pitches to hit. So I think Will Smith could be a really, really big key in this series. I don't know if Roberts keeps him in that 8th spot to see if that kickstarts him a little bit, but I do think they're going to need his offense. You can't take him out of the lineup because of what he's given you defensively all year long. The fact that he's called some really great games. He's been really good at the stopping opposing running games as well. So it's hard to get him out of the lineup for Austin Barnes, but you do need a little bit more offense from him. So hopefully that's going to be a thing that happens. We see in the World Series. Jasmeet asking, what changes do you see them making in the pitching staff? Well, I think the biggest thing is who's healthy. If Vesia is back, if they get Gratterall back, at some point, who are the guys that end up going away? I don't know if that if that means that we don't see Brent Honeywell or a Ben Kasparius. I think they've asked a lot out of Kasparius, and he has given them, I think, all they could really ask for. But I don't know that he makes it on the World Series roster if you have a healthy Alex Vesia. I'm trying to think of who else. Edgardo Henriquez, probably another guy that doesn't make the World Series roster if those other guys are healthy, if we see Vesia or Gratterall. I think some of the young arms who gave them big outs in big spots, I don't know that they necessarily make it to the World Series roster if Dave Roberts has some of his other veteran arms there. One guy that I am a little bit worried about, and Clint Pasillas mentioned this on yesterday's show, is Ryan Brazier. Looks like he's sort of regressing to what we saw earlier in the season from him. He's had some really tough outings. He hasn't had one real blow-up outing, but we did see in that bullpen game early in the NLCS, where he ended up giving up a run in the first, and then Landon Knack had a really rough go of it in the second inning, and the Mets ended up running off and winning that game. But even in the clincher, had to deal with traffic on the base paths. So I worry a little bit about Ryan Brazier. I don't know. I assume he's going to be on the World Series roster, but I worry about him in some high leverage situations if it comes down to it. JF, I never knew how much of a dog Honeywell is. That video of Muncy praising him is encouraging. I think really there are a lot of unsung heroes in the NLCS, and Brent Honeywell was one of them, because one of my concerns for this pitching staff going into the playoffs was, where were they going to get length? Who are the guys that could give them multiple innings? And Honeywell proved to be that. And, he was sort of sacrificed on the altar of game 5 a little bit when Flaherty blew up, and then Roberts turned to Honeywell and basically just said, we need you to carry us through pretty much the rest of this game. They got him into the 9th inning. They turned it over to Enriquez. But Honeywell going out and doing that allowed the Dodgers to set up that bullpen game in game 6. If he doesn't go that long, or at least if Roberts doesn't trust him to go that long, then you're talking about having to use some of the more high leverage arms, which really would have put you in a tough spot in game 6, considering they needed everybody to get all 27 of those outs in the clincher. So shout out to Brent Honeywell, man. Him and his turtleneck have done big things for the Dodgers in in this postseason. I see. Trying to get some other questions in here. I don't know. Jasmine saying maybe Brazier is overworked. Maybe. I mean, he's done a lot for this team, right? He's given them a lot of innings. He's given them a lot of tough innings. It could just be that he's starting to wear down here. 4 more wins. That's really all they need. That's all they need out of this group. And if Brazier can be there to sort of help it out, then hopefully he's there to kind of help give them some innings for sure. I know we still got a couple days left until we get to game 1. And so we got a few more preview things that we're going to do. I don't know, my idea, and I will run this by Greg and Parker. Definitely would like to kind of spend some time in the next day or two kind of talking about some of our favorite moments from the season, some of the things that that we will look back fondly on over the course of the season, over the course of 162 plus the playoffs. Obviously, Shohei and the 50-50 club are going to be a big part of it. But just some of the fun things that this team accomplished and that sort of thing. So I think that's kind of a thing that we can talk about over the next couple of days. Obviously, we're going to do a lot of series previews, I think especially on Thursday and Friday, as we kind of break down who these teams are, what they do, and that sort of thing. So I think that's going to be something to talk about. One more from Craig. Yankees have a lot of left-handed hitters. What lefties attack them in critical situations? Well, that's sort of why you're hoping that Alex Vesia is healthy and ready to go, because he can be that guy to sort of attack them. Because other than that, it's Anthony Banda. That's really it. And Banda's not a guy that you're going to count on to kind of get you, certainly not get through multiple innings, but he is very situational right now. So Banda, Vesia, those are the guys that are going to have to try and attack the left-handers in that lineup, because really that's all the Dodgers have in that situation. So not ideal necessarily, because you would like to be able to know that you can neutralize that left-handed hitting. I mean, again, obviously Juan Soto is going to be a big part of the Yankees' success or failure in this series, and knowing that you have somebody to sort of attack him from the left side, going to be a big deal. So definitely something we will keep an eye on as we get a little bit closer to the start of the series. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us. I know we still got plenty to go across the station all day. I appreciate y'all jumping in. I feel the love. I am grateful for it. But stick around. Travis and DeMarco coming up. I am sure they will talk a little bit more Dodgers as we get closer to game 1. I saw something this morning that I guess tickets for the World Series right now approaching Taylor Swift prices, that it could be like $2,500, I think, at minimum for a pair of tickets for the World Series. I guess not really a surprise. It's Dodgers, it's Yankees, it's the biggest stars in baseball going at each other for a chance to win a title. It's one that even if you don't like these teams, I think everybody's going to be paying attention to, because this is star power like baseball hasn't had in the World Series for a long time, and should be a whole lot of fun. So appreciate all your questions. Appreciate all your participation. Stick around here in the chat for Travis and DeMarco. Also, I know the Lakers get started tonight against the Timberwolves. Should be a great start to the season there. A lot of folks will be over at Cosm enjoying the shared reality experience of it. Also should be a whole lot of fun. Thanks, as always, to LAX. Thanks to Graham for running the stream as well. Appreciate you hanging out. We'll be with you back here on the Blue Review, 8:30 to 8:50, top 5 on the ESPN LA YouTube stream. In the meantime, enjoy your day, folks. We'll talk to you soon.